well, welcome everybody. Lots of people have been asking lots of questions, and some of it's a bit more technical perhaps than it needs to be. So we thought what we'd do is we'd have a couple of sessions so you can just come and ask the questions, and we'll do our very best to answer them and to keep you in the loop about this very exciting prospect. As you look out on that wonderful pitch again on this glorious sunny morning, you see what we're all about. I'm going to introduce Matt in a minute. He's going to do a lot of the explanation. We've got Peter, and he's got a lady from all the way over from the States to talk to you as well about what's going on. So please feel free to ask the questions. As long as we can do it in an orderly fashion, everybody will get a chance. What's going to happen to start with is that we've got some slides. Matt's going to just talk to some of those slides, and after each slide there'll be an opportunity to answer and ask questions about the issues on the slides. Okay, when that's finished there's an opportunity to ask any other questions that you want. All right, so if we can just do it in that way, that would be the best, I think. Okay, Matt, over to you then.
Thank you. So good morning everybody. I'm Matt Barker. I'm a lifelong Bury fan. Grew up in Hollins, went to Castlebrook. In terms of the thing that people most seem to associate me with Bury, some of you remember Bennett's Butchers in the centre of Bury. So I've been with Mr. Bennett's daughter since the age of 18. So I'm about as Bury can be. So yeah, I'm going to take you through kind of some of the kind of key areas that people have asked questions about recently. Some of it is technical, as Ian says. Don't be shy. Ask questions. If there's things you don't understand, I will try my best to explain them. So Peter, if you want to take us on to the first slide. You may not be able to read that at the back. Depends how good your eyes are. The slide after this is going to show you like a structure chart of companies, so you can see kind of how it's all organised. But what this tells you is Gigg Lane, so where we all sat here today, the Bury FC memorabilia, the intellectual property, the trading name are all owned now by a company called the Bury Football Club Company Limited. Okay, that's a new company that has been set up specifically to do that acquisition. It's called a company limited by guarantee, and that is different from a company limited by shares. Okay, so you will often think of like shareholdings in a company. A company limited by guarantee doesn't have shares, it has members. Okay, and as we come on to the next slide, you'll see that there's two members of that company limited by guarantee. The best thing to think of it is more like a mutual as opposed to a normal kind of limited company. The two members are therefore 50-50 owners of that company. Okay, and those two members are the Bury FC Supporters Society, what was formerly Forever Bury, and the Bury FC Benefactors Limited, which is the company that was set up to allow benefactors like Peter, myself, and others in the room, and also not in the room, to put their money into the project. Okay, that company that owns the stadium, the IP, the trading name, etc., has an asset lock. What that means is this cannot be sold. Okay, so no director can go and say, do you know what, I'm going to sell it and run off with the money. Can't happen. Okay, legally can't happen. It also has a provision in the articles that no debt can ever be taken. Okay, so again, no one can go and get a mortgage, do any of the kind of bad things that have happened in the past under previous owners. And also, it can never pay any dividends or distributions. Same thing, basically, but it can't. No money can be paid up out of the structure. Okay, so the supporters society can't take cash out. The benefactors who put money in can't take cash out. So all the cash that's in stays in and is recycled to the general improvement of the stadium, the football club, the community asset over time. Okay. The governance of that structure is important because, as I say, it's a 50-50 ownership because it has to be in a company limited by guarantee. The way we've set that up is the supporter society can have up to 4 seats on the board. The benefactors can have up to 3 seats on the board, and the council can have one seat on the board if the council puts some money into the project. They've said, as you've probably seen in the press, they have a willingness to put money in subject to, and we'll come on to that. But if they put money in, then they get representation, which I think is fair. The reason we have a company limited by guarantee is a function of central government. So when we were getting the grant funding, relatively late in the process, they said it must be a company limited by guarantee. Company limited by shares didn't meet their criteria, so we had to switch at the last second. What that could mean then is you end up in a deadlock situation when you're voting on something. So in a potential scenario, the society might want to do one thing with their 4 members on the board. The benefactors and the council for some reason might be working together and want to do something else, and you end up in a tie. Okay? So someone has to make the final decision. In that scenario, the chairman is the one that makes the final decision, and the chairman can only be an appointee by the supporters society. So the chairman is always the final say on any decision. So every which way, the supporters always make the final decision. And I'll just emphasise at this point, the benefactors are also all supporters. Everyone that's putting money into this is a lifelong Bury fan. So we're all kind of aligned. There's no kind of random third parties as part of this. But ultimately, supporter society is always in charge. Anything else on that page? No. I've kind of rattled through that a little bit, and we'll go on to a structure chart. But are there any immediate questions with what I've described? Yes.
If the council don't put money in, would that further seat be reallocated to someone else? Or
No, just falls away.
Right, okay.
Any more? Okay. So this is the structure chart of what we have today. Okay. So at the top, you'll see you've got the Bury FC Supporters Society on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you've got Bury FC Benefactors Limited. Some of you, because people love searching on Companies House and all this kind of thing, will have seen maybe the name Gigg Lane Propco Limited earlier in this kind of life cycle of this project. We originally set up that company to buy the stadium. That is a company limited by shares. And when I say the grant process meant we had to change quite late in the process, we've basically just recycled that company as a way for the benefactor money to come into the project, and set up what is down at the bottom. Initially, it was called a company called Gigg Lane Stadium Limited, which is the company limited by guarantee. That acquired the stadium, the IP, the trading name, and as part of the negotiation with the administrator, we convinced him to hold a shareholders meeting for the old company to change its name to something else, we don't care what, so that we could adopt the Bury Football Club Company Limited. The really pedantic people will say in the old company, the word "the" was at the end of the name. Okay, that's a function of Bury FC existing before Companies House really having proper records. Since then, they've standardised how you name companies, and you can't have the word "the" at the end of. It has to end in limited or PLC or whatever it is. So yeah, so that's why it's slightly different. No way around that. We tried to have it exactly as it was, but Companies House rejected us. Any questions, having now seen it in that form? Okay. This is just an illustration now of what the future could be, and I'm sure we'll get on to more detailed discussions about this, but the plan would be to keep the stadium, the trading name and the IP in one company, and then to set up or to have an operating company that manages the operation of the stadium, because this is not just a football club anymore. This is a community asset that will be used 7 days a week, 365, maybe 64, we'll close Christmas Day, days a year for all sorts of different things. So we want to keep that operating company separate from the stadium so that we don't have we have some control over how the cash is managed. So the stadium is always completely protected. And then on the far left, you'll see what I've called Football Team Limited. Doesn't exist, just so we're clear that these are just possible companies to be in the structure. the idea being there to have particularly the men's elite, but to have the football kind of team part of it in a separate company. And the reason for that is we need this community asset to remain completely solvent forever. Okay, what we can't have is people get carried away with the football team and start paying a striker 20 grand a week, and as a result the operating company gets into difficulty and the whole structure starts to get into difficulty. So the reason we have the separate companies is to instill the discipline that each has got to stand on their own feet. That's not to say, you know, on an annual basis you couldn't say, okay, well, the operating company's been really successful this year and is going to make a prudent transfer of cash to the football team. That's okay, but it has to be done in a very structured way. It can't just be done ad hoc. You know, the board have got to meet, vote, and make those kind of decisions. Any questions at this point? Yes.
How is the football ground going to be financed? Presumably the other two are going to have to put money in to keep the upkeep of the ground going?
Yes, so in particular the operating company, but yes, both would make contributions in terms of maintenance effectively. So I'll come on to funding a little later, but yeah, they would make contributions in. The day-to-day maintenance could be quite structured and organised, but the majority of the improvements on a look-forward basis will be done via grants or further capital fundraising. The operational kind of maintenance of the stadium will be primarily delivered by the operating company. And in terms of how the financing of that, it could pass from the football team if they've had a particularly, you know, profitable period, or it's recycling of cash in the operating company.
I'm still trying to get my head around the very
Sorry, before you ask, are you okay to?
Yeah.
Just so that I can get.
I've already confused my questions with mine. Yeah, I'm just trying to get my head around the Very Football Club Limited company name that had all the debt, as we know, which is part. Sad for those people, but obviously one way forward. So, how can we use that name in this situation as the holder of the ground with the same name? That's there, or is it just because they're there now that it's now a different name?
No, a company can be called anything as long as it doesn't exist already. So, you know, I can't go and set up Coca-Cola Limited. Yeah. But if for some reason Coca-Cola said we don't want to be called Coca-Cola anymore, we want to be called Roller Cola, then somebody could step in and say, right, well, I'm being Coca-Cola.
But the people who Coca-Cola, now Roller Cola, are owed money by.
Yep.
See Coca-Cola now owned by somebody else.
No, well, that's there's a difference between the company and the name.
Right.
They're not the same. So the company is left and will be liquidated, and all the debts, you know, unfortunately will be written off effectively.
Right. So it's quite a clever way. I'm not talking here, but generally a company could dump its debt and reopen it.
That's called a pre-pack administration.
I knew you'd know the name.
Yeah. So this, just in terms of my background is involved with administration, purchasing properties out of administration. So distressed properties that, you know, have not been invested in. Part of my job is to buy those properties from administration, spend the money, improve them, and, you know, ultimately try and sell them on. I am not an independent property developer. I'm not anything like that. I've worked for 13 years for Nationwide Building Society, where I did something broadly similar. And I've worked for an American company for 8 years doing, you know, that kind of thing. So this is my kind of background, shall we say. Any more? Okay. The next kind of section is around the capital expenditure programme. So it's really just to explain kind of some of the things that we've got happening at the stadium, short term, longer term. So the most pressing matters are at the top. So the community gym is a key part of the business plan. You're sat in it as we sit here today. Hope you're all enjoying it. So I'll come on to some kind of slides in a minute that have got an illustrative layout. But yeah, the plan is to convert Starkey's first floor and ground floor into a gym that's would be open to all of the community. Next major project is within the main stand, ground floor and first floor, making that space multi-use and community use, so it's available and used 7 days a week. So conference facilities, hospitality, office space. There's talk of like health and NHS. The NHS have been in touch, for example, wanting to use the space. They're not quite sure how they want to use it, but they really want to use it. Adult education, the college, schools. There's a range of people, and we're working particularly with Bury Council there in terms of who the users may be, and frankly what they will pay. And the design works are underway for how we'll reconfigure all that space to make it multi-purpose. Out the front, the club shop, front of the car park, in the short term, that's surplus to requirements. So the intention is to let that. We've got a letting agent appointed already. There's decent demand for that kind of space. And yeah, it's a useful revenue driver for us. While I'm on kind of outside, just for those that do or don't know, the social club is not part of what we've acquired. Okay, it had been separated out on the title, and the administrator wanted more money for it that frankly we didn't think was a good idea given everything else we had to do. So yeah, we didn't acquire the social club. I don't know who will. I don't actually know if it's sold yet. I hear differing stories. 3G pitch. Our original plan had been to have a 3G pitch in by this summer. 3G pitch is important for driving revenue in the future. There's a huge shortage of those facilities in Bury. Bury Council have identified a need for 8 pitches. I think they're doing 1 in Radcliffe at the moment. It's a massive driver of revenue. However, we've not been able to do it for a number of reasons. One, the acquisition was delayed. It proved a more complex process than everyone thought. Who knew? Buying from administrators whilst getting a government grant, whilst working through a pandemic would be challenging. It was. So that was a factor. There's a global supply shortage across everything at the moment. So just getting the materials in place for this summer wouldn't have been possible. And then finally, we want to work with the Football Foundation in terms of funding. And their kind of timeline to get the cash in place, it just wasn't feasible in the end. So the working plan is to have it installed next summer. And in the meantime, as I say, we're putting the grant funding in place with the Football Foundation, going through the tendering process, just getting everything ready. But for those who've been outside this morning, the pitch is looking pretty good. It pains me we'll dig it up, but commercially it's the right thing to do. Longer term, there's some kind of obvious redevelopment angles. Manchester Road End is a clear kind of focus. We could have far better hospitality in that stand if it was completely redone. We could put some safe standing space in that stand as well. That's an obvious one. But to do that, we would need significant capital. And there's grants available to do that. The Football Supporters Association are particularly supportive on that front. They've got a lot of experience of that with other clubs, but that's for further down the road. Okay. Equally, we are going to do a feasibility study for the whole stadium of what else could we do, what other improvements could we do, and again, what capital funding could we access to be able to do all of that? Because if it's not funded, we can't do it. In terms of funding, we've obviously got the government match funding. We've got about 300,000 of that still to draw. So every £1 we spend, the government match funds it. Okay, so very important. They're probably our number one stakeholder today, and they've been very supportive through the process, I have to say. They've been a pleasure to work with. Football Foundation, I've mentioned. Sponsorship, we're just about to launch the drive for sponsorship of the stadium. The kind of commercial sector will be a key supporter for us going forward. Donations, people may have seen, we're asking people, to donate. We've been contacted by people locally, but also globally, frankly, saying, love what you're doing, how can I support? but I'm based in America, Australia, Holland, Germany, wherever. We need to give them a route to donate, and for the next 300,000, every pound they put in, the government matches. So it's important. Council funding I've mentioned. I won't go into too much more detail. It's clear in the press where the council funding is, and then more benefactors. So one of my jobs and other benefactors is to try and find other people that have a similar mindset that want to make a contribution to the community, that like the concept of a fan-led football team. Okay. Oh, any questions? Yes.
That 300,000 match funding that's still available, is there a deadline for that being available?
Not really. Officially, it was the 31st of March, which gone, but no, they're very, they get it. They've been here, they love the project. This is exactly what they're set up to do.
I'm making an assumption here, but the gym is one of the first projects there.
Yes.
I'm assuming we've got the funding to carry out that work.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Hello.
Are you going to get sponsorship and more benefactors to come on board when there's no idea of when football is going to be played?
It's a challenge.
It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. It's difficult. We just got to explain the reality.
I think if we had a date, I think most of that stuff would be feasible to bring people in.
Yeah. No, it would be easier. We're in ongoing discussions with Bury AFC. We have been, we started talking to them on the 9th of November last year. It was the first time I sat down and met kind of leaders of that team. Since the acquisition, we've been part of a working group facilitated by the council with Manchester Combined Authority, the FSA and anyone else, central government, they also join us. The timeline for those negotiations is largely set by Bury AFC.
Timescale then?
From where we are today, probably 4 or 5 months, I would say. They want to undertake due diligence of the financial plan, the documentation. We signed an NDA about a month ago. We shared all the documents, and we're expecting some feedback in the next couple of weeks.
The Bury Supporters Association have put a vote out to our members to see if we would like to join with them and see what response is from that. Right
now.
And then take it from there, because if the majority of the fans want it as a no, then why are we carrying on with the talks?
The difficulty right now is I don't know what I could say is the proposal. Because
we're not going to know that for 5 months, are we?
Well, no, sorry, 5 months to complete the process. So sorry, there's a period of due diligence, and then we'll start a voting process. And under the statutory requirements of both the Bury Supporter Society and the equivalent Bury AFC Supporter Society, you have to go through a number of votes with a number of kind of statutory cooling off periods in between. So the reason I say it's so long is that's how long the voting process takes. So the voting process takes about 3 months to do. Okay. If we said right now, do you want to join together? I don't know what that is. I can't tell you.
Would we not ask the Bury FC fans if they want AFC to join?
In what way? In what way do we want them to join? I don't know. You've got to be detailed with these kind of things.
We're asking AFC if they want to join us, but we've got to ask the fans if we want them to join, if we would like them to join us. So everything seems to be one-sided for voting on the AFC side.
I think one of the issues we've got is the question you're saying the fans. We want a united fan base. That's the plan overall, and I appreciate there are ups and downs and so on, but when you say ask the fans whether they want to join AFC, we believe that some of the AFC people are fans who want to join. You understand the difficulties? Yeah. We are aware of the issues and we are trying to push it, but the plan, and I think everybody agrees, is if at all possible, we don't want 2 teams in Bury. We want 1 team that we're all supporting, and we hope that's going to be possible, and we're doing all we can to do that. Now, I understand how you feel, but we feel that a vote at this stage from some of the fans to say yes we do or no we don't isn't going to help the way forward. That, I think,
it's frustrating. There's no two ways about it, but we have to be patient. Hello.
Is the council funding still reliant on us joining with AFC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very, very clear on that point. It's entirely contingent. And to be, completely clear, as part of the grant funding, the government grant funding, that was done on the basis we will try to find a way to come together.
What happens if they vote not to come over here?
Then they've made that choice, and
So we're going to struggle then?
we have to be. We would struggle. If we don't all come together as a fan base, commercially, it's very, very difficult.
Do you not think we will all come together as a fan base, even though there's two separate identities?
I hope so. I sincerely want it.
That's what I feel.
I think we will get there, but it's a longer process than we would all ideally like. But I understand why they are cautious. They have something set up which has been successful, and they want to make sure that when they're coming together that it is sustainable and viable and all sensible things. I can't be critical of that. I wish the time frame was shorter. I do, and I'll be doing everything I can to shorten that. We give the information as quickly as we can. We respond to the questions, and we behave proactively and sensibly. But it will take as long as it takes, I'm afraid. Any more?
What is it that AFC are seeking in terms of what would they want from a deal?
I don't know, is my honest answer. We've made proposals, we've not had a proposal kind of in detail or in writing back. So
I think the issue is 100% fan ownership and control, and not letting what happened in the past happen again. I think that's the sort of general concern. I mean, I'm not involved in it, but that would be my concern as well. So it's trying to find a way forward for all those Bury fans. I don't think we're there, them and us. It's Bury fans, but a way forward. But with it, I think it's just that split that just people have concerns with, and I guess that's why the nitty-gritty needs that ironing out.
Yeah.
If I could answer a bit on that. I've talked to a lot of the AFC people, through all this. I've tried to be, a person who will answer questions and that kind of stuff with them. And there's nothing in the AFC charter that says they're 100% fan-owned. And I've been through it, and I've challenged the leadership. I spoke to some of their board last night. It doesn't say they're 100% fan-owned. In fact, it specifically says they can have investment for part of the club. So, although a lot of people are wrapped around that, it's not what it says. And I said, well, you think you would have mentioned it if that was your definition, and you haven't. And they say, yeah, we've got provisions for investment. So I know they like the 100% fan ownership. My challenge back to them and the people that ask us about that is, if you've got majority ownership, what's the difference? Part of the difference is that if you have benefactors, or investors, whatever you want to call them, we say benefactors because of the lack of expectation of return. If you have majority ownership by the fans, what's the difference? The main difference actually is that the benefactors give you the ability to develop a capital base very quickly, as we've got here. We've got a stadium, they don't, right? And they're reliant on the council building one for them. They could have one overnight if they joined. So they're not defined by 100% fan ownership. And I think sometimes they forget about that when they're discussing this.
Yeah, my name's Sheena Adam. I think I'd just like to comment back to Peter on that. Yeah. I've watched Bury AFC, but I'm not involved in the higher echelons or anything. But I think it's accountability within that, because you structurally had 4 supporters representative. So I think it's what happens underneath that, so that there is accountability. I think that's one of the concerns, really, rather than 100% fan ownership as an absolute.
Right.
I think it's, you have 4 people essentially representing all of the fans, and what happens underneath that. Whereas Bury FC are very open. We get accounts every month. You get a lot of feedback about what's happening within the team.
Sure,
and the club.
sure. And my response to that when people say that is, so set it up that way for Bury FC if we all came together. You know, if that's a condition of coming together, let's write it down. And if we agree, then let's just keep going with that. So there's no lack of wanting to be that way. You know, no one on the benefactor side has got any delusions of owning or running a football team. This is about trying to get Gigg and football back at Gigg as Bury FC. And if we can do that together, so much the better.
The operating business at Bury AFC is superb. Like I've been through. I'm a member of Bury AFC, just so we're clear. Like, you know, the quality of the accounts, the way it's run. I've been to a game. It's very, very good. And to try and replicate that from scratch will be a lot of work. I don't want to do that. I haven't got the hours in my life, frankly. So, you know, hopefully we can find a way to come together. If we can't, then we have to do it ourselves. And that's a lot of time and it's a hell of a lot of effort. Any more? So this is just an illustration really of the gym. This is just really just to show you kind of where the running machine will be, where the cycling will be. I put this up really just to show kind of, you know, this is not just me just standing here saying this is what we're doing. You know, there is tangible, real activity going on. These came through, I think, beginning of the week. So we'd have running machines up here, free weights, etc. Do you want to go on to the next one? Next one's the ground floor. I think this is more kind of interesting. So an accessible gym space. So, you know, it's truly available for the whole community. Everybody can use it. Spin classes, unisex changing rooms. I've never come across unisex changing rooms, but apparently they've become very common. It's an efficient use of space. And we're talking to a couple of operators who, you know, say it works well. So they're the experts, got to take their word for it. One of the things we want to do is to rework the entrance, because, you know, as you come into here, it's not a particularly attractive entrance into this building. So lose the turnstiles, kind of open it up. So those kind of plans are also kind of underway. Want to go on to the next one? Okay, so this is a summary really of the business plan. The thing I want to kind of dispel here is the myth, and I do call it a myth because it is, that Gigg Lane is somehow an unsustainable football stadium. Okay, the costs are incredibly low from a pure real estate perspective. Okay, 3 of the stands don't have heating, don't really have power, they don't cost anything on a kind of day-to-day operational basis. I know you're all enjoying the heating in here today. It's not an expensive property to own. If it were, frankly, the previous owners would have spent money on it, but they haven't. It's not this kind of crazy asset. So what we've got here is an operational business plan. It's a kind of annualized view on the assumption we have a combined team or structure with Bury AFC. That's an assumption. But this includes feedback from central government, feedback actually at a high level from some of the management of Bury AFC around ticket prices and season tickets, membership, etc. And who else has fed into it? The Football Supporters Association, based on their experience of non-league football, etc. I must stress very clearly, Bury AFC have not signed this off. They've not provided detailed commentary, but I wanted to give you a kind of illustration of what we're talking to or working with. So you've got on the left-hand side kind of revenue, community usage is driven by the gym, the multi-use space, the pitch, because we will be using the pitch there's a game tomorrow, but going forward we'll be renting the pitch out on an ongoing basis. There's already a huge amount of demand for that from youth teams, children, adults, all sorts of people. And on the left-hand side, staffing. Staffing looks high as a cost. That's because we really want to drive the community engagement. We want to have people that are really making sure that we bring in the schools, we bring in the public bodies of all sorts. So it could be lower with the use of volunteers, but we want to be prudent with our assumptions. We don't want to be assuming everyone will just turn up and do this for free. Some people, people need to be paid day to day. Cost of sales just relates to the food and beverage and merchandise. elite men's team, that's based on the Bury AFC budget, so as a prudent position, including kit and travel, etc. Insurance, the insurance for this year actually is only £8,000. It's paid, but once the stadium becomes fully operational, that will increase. So it's a reasonable estimate based on our broker's opinion. Heat, light and power, again, the first month electric bill was £26. But we didn't do very much and the lights weren't on very long. But, you know, we've put what we think is a prudent number in there. Obviously right now heat and power is a very, very hot topic, so we're being conservative. But that number again is directly linked to playing football, and this applies to a lot of these costs. If you're not playing football on a Saturday, you're not turning the floodlights on. Okay, it makes a bit, or not just a Saturday and an evening. You makes a big difference how the stadium is used as to what costs, you know, how the costs go up and down. Maintenance, you know, because we think it's important to keep investing in the stadium. So, you know, groundsman doing, well, sorry, no, the groundsman's in the staffing, but yeah, general maintenance of the stadium is important. And then ancillary costs, you know, things just add up, you know, internet, bookkeeping, it's a list the length of your arm, to be honest, but it's, yeah, all in there. Business rates and VAT could add to those costs. We're in negotiations with the council on kind of where the business rates could be. We will get some relief, could be 100%, but nothing's agreed at this point, so I don't want anyone to think that it is. And then VAT, again, depending on how we structure, there's ways and means to not be charging VAT or not be paying VAT. As I say, if there's no elite football in this coming season at Gigg Lane, which I have to say it's very possible there's not, then obviously that has an impact on revenue, but it also means your operating costs fall considerably as well. Okay, so we obviously have got a version of this assuming no elite football, but my hope is that longer term we absolutely find a way to come together. And then the final thing is, our key priority at the moment is raising capital for all the works that we want to do. Oh, do you want to go back just in case there's any questions on this one?
Are they going to be sent out and made public?
The deck? Yes, probably. I mean, we're doing it here. We're filming it, so you know, one way or the other. I'm sure people have taken photos. There's nothing in here. There's nothing in here that is inaccurate. It deliberately doesn't include reference to Bury AFC. They've been very clear we should not be putting reference to them in any materials, and we totally respect that. But yeah, we've tried to give you as much information as we can with where we are today. Any other questions on this slide? And then if not, happy to open up to any other topics people want to discuss. Thank you. Yes.
Car parking.
So the car park is a very interesting topic. The car park, some of you, I'll go from the beginning. Some of you may know, some of you may not know. So the car park, we own the freehold of the car park. Okay, there's then a sublease which was for a company called Murderco, and then that sold off the car parking spaces individually. I think it's 276. Might not be spot on with that number, but it's in that ballpark. To individuals. Okay, I legally shouldn't say it was a Ponzi scheme. So legally, I'm not saying it was a Ponzi scheme. And as a result, people, frankly, were conned into buying a car parking space. The sublease, so the middle lease, if you like, has now passed back to the Crown. Okay, and by the Crown I mean the state. It's been disclaimed by the liquidator of the Murderco, and as a result, those people with an individual lease on a car parking space, their interest in theory survives for another 18 years. Okay, but in practice, we're free to kind of use the car park, you know, in ordinary course of business. I've dealt with situations like this before, particularly on apartment buildings, where people sell off the apartments individually before they're built, and then the whole thing falls apart because it was never real in the first place. Most of the buyers are in Asia or overseas one way or the other. Trying to contact them and rectify it is very, very difficult. You can't find them, frankly. Some of them will be dead, statistically. It's just a reality. And as a result, you get in a difficult situation where you can't resolve the overall problem because you need all of them to do it. So trying to get them all to agree on some sort of settlement or some sort of resolution is nigh on impossible. So what this means for us in practical terms is we can use the car park. You know, the motorcycle people have continued to use it throughout the whole administration. We could build on it, but we'd be opening ourselves up to a risk. And right now, with the other capital projects we have to do, I wouldn't be advocating.
So when you start renting the spaces out to the NHS, to the gym, things like that, you're just going to use it anyway?
Yes.
Right.
People just use the car park. And if somebody, you know, since we've started this project, we've had one contact from someone in Asia, and we've heard nothing from them recently.
Do we get revenue back from the motorbike training?
Yes.
We do?
Yeah, they pay us a monthly rent. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's helpful. I know, frankly, it's also good to have a presence here every day of the week, pretty much. So yeah, no, they're very much welcomed, and you know, I would hope, or part of the plans will be to make sure we can always continue to accommodate them. We'll just have to balance that with the volume of cars that are coming using the various facilities. But certainly in the short term, they're an important partner for us.
You mentioned that there's 18 years left, so presumably in 18 years all this problem will go away anyway.
Absolutely. 18 years, it all goes away. In what we could contact the Treasury solicitor now. There is technically a way we could have them cut the whole thing apart and resolve the situation. I don't advocate that because it's a case of why would you kick the hornet's nest? If they take that action, it kind of flags to everybody something's happening, and then potentially those people come forward and start causing us just headaches trying to bring some sort of claim against us. Technically, they have no claim against us, but you know, people might try. And in the short term, we've got enough to do, frankly. We've got enough priorities, and if we just want to use it as a car park, which we do, then you know, there's no need. What we could do on the car parking as we get fully operational is use it for kind of like a fan zone. So you know, like bars, food, those kind of temporary structures that you can put on it. Absolutely, that's part of the plans, and I don't really see any issue with doing that. Any more? I'm conscious I've talked a lot.
Matt, how long's this session for?
This?
Yeah.
2 hours, but
2 hours. Well, I'd like to put a question out there because we've all got our feelings on what a successful coming together would look like. We've all got our own individual opinions on that, and I'd just be interested to see what other people's feelings were about how a successful merger would look to you, because it's got to be, for me, it would have to be palatable for both sides. So for the AFC followers, and you know, I'm staunch Bury FC through and through, so it would have to be palatable for me as well. But we've all got a different feeling on how that should be, so I'd be interested to see what it looks like to other people in the room.
Let's get it right, Anthony. This place was built for Bury Football Club. It weren't built for anybody else. This was built for us.
You know my views, Anthony, but it's a crying shame because I know a lot of people that have said, I'm not coming down to help and volunteer unless I know what's going to happen. And there's a lot of people that feel like that, and I understand their feelings. To me, I said, I'm coming down, I want to be positive, I want to take part in this, bring it back to the community, back to Bury FC, right? And if it's the wrong outcome, no matter what I've done, I will walk away. Sadly I will.
A lot of fans are like that. An awful lot of fans are like that.
So just to that gentleman, what is the right outcome? I think that's what Anthony's asking you.
We've discussed this. We have discussed it. You know, maybe if we have to take a manager, right? And then we have to take, I understand we'd have to take contracted players, right? They borrowed the fans. They borrowed the fans. That's what's happened. They didn't stick to what they originally put in their constitution, that they would fold.
Yeah.
And they've done everything negative. What appears to be when any success has been announced for this club, right? And it's the hierarchy I don't want. I don't want the hierarchy of that club.
The hierarchy have led a very successful football team.
I understand that.
We are very balanced, so it's not very FC.
I see this as two separate
To me,
entities.
we have different opinions. That's
Yeah,
all.
I understand that.
Right, so what would successful coming together look like for you? If you were to come back here, how would it have to look to you?
I mean, it's a really good question, and I wouldn't have. I mean, I don't. Well, let's step back. I don't think what we have here is the old Bury FC. We've all lost the old Bury FC. It has wounded us all, but it doesn't exist anymore. So we've got to then go, where do we go forward? We go forward with us as Bury fans, with football at Gigg Lane. To me, that is perfect. It isn't Bury FC. We know it's not Bury FC.
Why does it not exist anymore?
Pardon?
Why does it not exist?
Well, we know when I think.
We're here. No, we're here.
Yeah, the community we are, but it is not.
Walked away.
No.
Left it. That's why it doesn't exist.
Do you need me to go back? You know why it doesn't exist. Because
Officially.
Stuart, Dave, the other bloke, I can't even name him, because I don't want to, destroyed what was something very precious to us all. But it doesn't exist anymore. We have to move
That's
on.
your opinion. That's
Right. It is my opinion.
Probably about 10 people have that opinion.
Pardon?
Probably about 10 people have the opinion that it doesn't exist.
One at a time, yeah.
Well, it's factually true.
There's a lady in the back which just wanted to speak.
Well, that's, I mean,
does
I
exist.
think if we could.
Did you not listen to the bit where we bought the intellectual property?
Well,
That's where
that was part
Bury
of my
Football
question.
Club was formed on a piece of paper in 1892.
Yeah.
Bury Football Club officially was formed in 1885,
And I
and that's
suppose,
where we still are
answering
here.
Anthony's question, for me, this last year I realised, for me, Bury FC, which deep in my heart, as is in yours, we both love it, is the people. And I've enjoyed, I appreciate you don't share the view, I've enjoyed the year that we've had at Bury AFC.
Would you still say Bury FC didn't exist if you wasn't watching AFC?
It
AFC
doesn't
didn't
exist.
exist.
It's fact.
So if you didn't have
It's
another...
fact, isn't it?
No.
Matt, we just talking about, I think that's part of the problem we've got.
I think, can we just have one? Can we just have one at a time? Just let this lady finish, and then I'll let somebody else come in.
That's not what football clubs are, are they?
Well,
Wigan
we've not
Athletic
paid the
doesn't
debt,
exist.
Jamie,
Bolton doesn't exist. Leeds don't exist. Bournemouth don't exist. Rangers don't
Sorry, I
exist.
didn't get the beginning of this.
All these other football clubs don't exist. Is that what you're saying? Rangers.
In
They're in the semi-final of the major European competition.
So you're saying they don't
60,000 fans,
exist?
they don't exist. They do.
Exactly, and for me, Bury football exists because we still have a team, in my opinion. We will still have a team if we can all come together and go, this is Bury football.
This club never died. This club, just because it didn't play football, never died. It was just a sleeping giant, and now it's been reborn thanks to a glorious group of people that have helped resurrect
And what
this.
this glorious group of people done is fantastic, there's no doubt in that. But the problem that we have, and from just talking to this chap here, is that the old Bury Football Club 1885 with its 2 stars has died.
No,
No, it
Yeah,
hasn't.
it's
still alive,
actually.
actually.
the registration number on company's
Okay,
house is
well,
died.
okay.
That's what
And
you like.
I'm not saying it with any pleasure, because it's still alive in me, and it's still alive in you, and it's still alive in Anthony.
So why do you keep saying it doesn't exist if it's still alive?
Because it's actually a feeling.
I think people have,
Just let this lady know. Yes.
people have different opinions on what a football club is and what it looks like. And unfortunately, we all went through that awful, awful loss. My epiphany came when we had the Legends match, actually. And I was stood there, and Steve Dale had one of his rants, didn't he, about the Legends match and how he didn't get the money, la la la. And I thought, actually, he's not the football club. That's not the football club. It's not a piece of paper. It's actually all of us. We are the football club. Unfortunately, we've now seen some kind of divide. I don't think that divide's as big as
I don't
we
think
would all.
I think the majority of people come back
I
here.
think
It's
well,
not at all.
I think whether
It's not
people,
huge at all.
whether
It's
people,
not huge at all.
it's not. It's not. I
It is
think
not.
basically we all
You
want
want it to be
very
huge, but it's not
similar.
huge. What do you mean I want it to be huge? Because you make it all the time. You want it to be huge, but it's not huge. I go watching AFC now and again.
I'm
still a Bury fan. I've never watched it once. You've got people like Kenny Hindle that comes down here, you're a Shaker fan for 70 years, gone down watching you lot. Even my own father, 85-year-old, 77 years watching this lot, has gone down with my brother-in-law. We no longer speak over it. And you're telling me there's not a divide? You're telling me there's no divide? It's not a case of that. There is a divide.
Yeah, can we just have, please, can we just calm down and stop? We're getting to what we want to talk about, but please can we do it in an orderly fashion so everybody has a chance. This gentleman at the front would like to have a contribution.
You seem to think, or I'm getting the opinion, that you're thinking that Bury AFC fans are not Bury FC fans, okay? If you think that way, you are completely wrong, right? You've got to accept that, right? The gentleman here said that without Bury AFC's involvement, then you're really going to struggle.
Well, they're struggle then.
You're really going to struggle.
Yeah.
Why struggle?
If you've managed it on your 1,600 or your 1,885 on your last match, if you've managed it on that, I'm damn sure we can manage on double.
You know, do you think people want to come back and stand who've been watching AFC?
You want to carry on watching AFC?
Just a minute, please. I'll hear you in a minute. Please carry on.
Your attitude, okay, about this is going to cause Bury FC problems. Okay, the people here, your benefactors, the glorious benefactors who resurrected your club, our club. My bad.
That's the point.
My bad. The benefactors who rectified our club, okay, say a merger or a join together is really essential for us to go forward. Okay.
John made that point for us earlier when you talk about sponsorship.
So the animosity has got to stop.
Listen,
I never said that. I said the animosity from both sides, if you want to go forward, has got to stop. Right? I've seen terrible abuse on social media, horrible, obscene comments made about my daughter from a person sat in this room on social media. Comments like that have got to stop. Right? They've got to stop. Because without it, and without a joint coming together, both sides are going to struggle.
Yeah.
And there's no need for it. We're all Bury fans. All of us. Whether you watch AFC, whether you don't, whatever, we're all Bury fans. And we've got to come together, as these gentlemen here say, otherwise, what's the future?
That person sorry.
Can I say this from not a lifelong Bury fan? I just want to say, 1978 went to Main Road, and I watched Man City for 21 years, and it closed on whenever it closed, 2000 and something. I've been to the Etihad twice. It's quite emotional, this actually. I'd rather not be on this, thank you. It is because, like, as soon as it closed, and actually this gentleman, I was sat down in my chair, and Sheila was there who's died. I've got Eddie there, I've got him, I've got the three blokes behind me, and he said to me, "Does it feel odd?" I went, "No, it feels home." I'd like to thank the people from AFC for bringing. I would have gone to AFC if there was somewhere to sit. Yeah, there's about 5 seats at the back, and Terry and Jade have always got them. But if I can't stand up for a full thing, so I don't want the safe standing. But kind of, I'd like to thank Bury AFC for at least kind of grasping the nettle and saying, we're going to keep football going. I'd like to thank these gentlemen for bringing home back. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Thank you, sir.
I just don't get it.
I don't get it actually. It's that emotion. I think it's the emotion after a death. Our football club died. I appreciate different views.
But to me, that's what I
It died
don't
at
like
that
when
point.
you have so-called Bury fans keep saying Bury's dead, Bury's dead, Bury's
Sorry,
dead.
what I meant that it felt like, to me it felt a second to my
That's what I don't like,
That's
because
what happened.
if we're all pushing Bury forward, we all can't keep going forward saying, but Bury's dead, Bury's dead, Bury's dead. That's my own opinion.
Gigg Lane is here. We've got
Sorry,
a team. Let's
I'll
go.
just go back. It felt like a death to me. I was
Right,
talking about how
that's
it felt
fair
to me.
enough, yeah.
So it felt like a death. And I feel it did to a lot of people, and we've all dealt with that feeling like a death in different ways. And it's like a family that just needs to shake themselves up and say, at the end of the day, we all love Bury football, and we need to move forward together.
Can I just say this, that we need to move forward? Can I just say this, please? We need to move forward together, okay? Now, if we move forward separately, what will AFC be doing? Can I ask you, where will they be playing?
Well, nobody knows, do we?
No, exactly.
Well, I guess at Radcliffe.
Well, you see, if AFC want to move forward, which I presume they do, they've got plans to move higher up and so on, at some stage, are you still going to be able to play at Radcliffe?
Well, they're engaged. Sorry, but that's a
talks
negative
with
comment.
you. Well,
That's
it
a
is a
going
negative
back
comment. It's
comment.
a
That's a negative comment.
It's a practical comment.
It's a
isn't
negative
it?
comment.
Because what I'm saying to you
It's a
is
negative
that
comment.
it's in the best interest of AFC, as well as Bury AFC, that we move together. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
it's a negative comment.
Excuse me. If they did join up,
On the platform.
what would the name be imminently?
Bury
Obviously,
FC.
because you can't use that for 3 to 5 years. You've said.
I spoke to the FA about that myself, and that's true that's true if you don't settle the football creditors, right? And we want to. It doesn't mean you have to pay 100 pence on the pound, but if you settle with them, then you've got a case for use.
With the administrator.
The administrator is out of that now. We're speaking directly with the football creditors, right? And we believe there's a good potential for a settlement.
So is the major stumbling block Steve Dale's son?
No, it's nothing to do with it. They're completely out of the picture. Correct. Football creditors. Yeah, football creditors.
Can you say what the level of debt is?
No, I don't think we can.
We prefer not to right now.
So
But
if the football creditors are paid, does that mean the original Bury FC hasn't died? Like this one?
let's not get into the semantics. But it means that the FA should allow you to use the name if you settle with the football creditors, and you don't have to wait for the 5 years. And we're 3 years. Yeah, we're okay. Yeah, fair enough.
If you don't settle with the creditors, the football creditors,
Then you got your 5 years.
Okay.
Three-
So going
yeah.
back to the original question,
Yes.
if you join up with people at AFC,
Yes.
what would the name become?
Well, so we'd have to negotiate with the FA and take a settlement with the football creditors to be able to be called Bury FC. But from our perspective, the goal is to be called Bury FC and play at Gigg Lane.
But that's what I'm saying. If you didn't settle the football creditors,
Yeah, but we don't consider that to be an option. We want to get that done, and we believe we can get it done.
I don't think that's clear. Because I apologise.
No, fair enough. Fair enough.
didn't
And
think
it's
that
been very
was-
recent that we've had that engagement. But
That was perfect.
I personally met with the football creditors and believe that there was a reasonable settlement close.
Peter, can I just ask,
Yes.
can we decide who we settle with? Because would not some money go to previous owners?
No, not a red cent, as they say. Yeah, it's to the individuals. Yeah, and it's primarily players that were on contracts that were not honoured by the club falling.
Right, my apologies, I missed.
Yeah, it's no problem.
Well, I just wonder whether we put a block on social media contact again, like we did for that we had the last information about Find the Ground, because I think it causes such a lot of disharmony between two sets of fans. You know, I do myself. I sit there at home and read comments, you know, about what people are feeling, and I don't think it does any good. I think we're talking about probably a very small number of people that have very strong views that are some way maybe influencing people who, like myself, haven't got such strong views, but just want football down at Gigg Lane again. So I don't know whether that's maybe something we should maybe think about. You know, still provide us with information, but stop this silly bickering that's going on that is just causing such ill feeling between fans. I've never watched AFC, I never will do. That's how I feel when I can't, you know, I can't change that's. I've always been a great fan, but I have no strong disagreements with them, other than that maybe I can't understand why they don't want to come back to Gigg. I don't know how many of those people are original Bury FC supporters. I think quite a lot of them are, and I know people that do watch AFC. But I just feel that the bickering and the nastiness needs to stop, because I think that is what will lead us moving forward with maybe any sort of merger.
I never joined Facebook, I'm not on Twitter, and frankly I think if I was on social media I wouldn't be stood here today, because I would have walked away. I don't think it's in any way healthy.
Robert, I think you wanted.
Can I just ask you mentioned still release statements, but don't you know, allow this bickering to go on and stuff.
Perhaps people could just stop doing it as well.
Yeah, people just need to grow
Don't
up.
have to.
There's nothing that makes grown men act like school children more than social media.
Yeah, it's true.
You mentioned before that the negotiations between the two parties could take up to 4 or 5 months. What's the deadline for getting a place in the league then, with some agreed settlement?
For a place in
any league.
Next season's past.
So we're not going to get football.
It's highly unlikely there'll be football in the summer.
We haven't stopped trying.
Yes.
It has to be said. We haven't stopped, because we need a plan B if there's going to be no merger. We haven't stopped trying to make something happen for next season. But we have to accept that as time goes by, it gets harder and harder.
But if the merger takes place in that timescale, is it not a possibility that whatever?
If a merger happens in the timescale,
no, I'm talking about mid-season. Because it'll be before August 23.
Technically, Bury AFC would have to ask for permission to move venue, so they'd have to get special dispensation. It's possible, but I can't say yes or no whether it would happen. But that's practically what you'd have to do, and they'd have to deal with their lease at Radcliffe Borough. I don't know the terms of that. But it's technically possible.
So have AFC got another 12 months to run on the lease then?
Yes, so they have to give notice in their league to for where they're going to play next season. I think they put this in their statement. So they had to do that in end of March, I think it was. So yeah, that's prudent. They have to. I think it's. If they had to do that, because let's say we spend 4 months negotiating and then we can't agree, they've got no home for next season. So that it was absolutely the only thing they could do, frankly. So that's what they've done. And like I say, if we can find an agreement, which I really, really hope we can, then potentially they could move mid-season. But it is at the discretion of the leagues. It's not within their power to decide.
Can I just come back, because you said you didn't know what I asked you earlier, you said you didn't know what AFC wanted, and that concerns me a little bit, because how can you negotiate, if you don't know what the other side are after? I mean, I'm all 100% behind this. I've never been to see AFC. I won't be to go see AFC. But I've got nothing against people that go against. I'm not one of them ones that go on social media and write nonsense about people that do. But it's just not for me. I'm more 100% behind what you're proposing, but if it's not for AFC, then there's got to be a middle ground, or they agree to what you're offering. And if there's no room for a settlement, then surely you're going to have to go your own way.
Yeah, the reason it's a process, so they want to complete their diligence and understand kind of that it's viable and sustainable, and then we'll get into what are the kind of terms that are acceptable and work for both parties, and there will be some compromises that have to be made to do all of that. We haven't got to that stage of the discussion, so
you could say maybe they could run in parallel with each other. That's not how they would prefer to do it. They want to complete the due diligence first, and then we get into the commercial negotiation.
It's the business plan that they're...
Business plan is what they're reviewing, vetting, and all the documents related to the acquisition. You know, we could have layered a load of debt on this that, you know, nobody knows about. We haven't, but, you know, that's the kind of thing that they're being prudent and sensible and want to make sure it is exactly as we've said it is.
It's not what I'm saying is it's not the principle of what you're...
The principle of coming together and playing at Gigg Lane, they are, well, the management all say they are supportive of.
Yeah, but it's things like the 100% fan ownership. Yeah, and I know, like I said, there's nothing in AFC that said they can't change that. But is that sort of a red line? And if there's a red line for either side, then and it's not the same. It's not on the same. You know, there's a difference. Then you're never going to get agreement. No
Can I just mention, because I think Matt will tell you that you've just signed a memorandum of understanding.
No, it's not. We've signed. We haven't had the signed copy back. Yeah.
But you understand it's coming. I think.
Yes, but that is really a document that says, yeah, we're going to work together.
Yeah.
To try and find a solution. But no one's talking about, you know, well, this is a red line, this is a red line. It's not Brexit.
Yeah, we haven't said any terms when we say if things are off the table. And neither have they, to be honest, but we just haven't got to one of the specifics of the...
So practical things like membership and how the two would come together. So, for example, obviously some people are members of the SS, some people are members of AFC, some of us are members of both. How is that all to be ironed out yet in terms of things like how then the fan representatives would be elected to a board and how fans would feed in directly to how, because I think that's a concern of some fans is, you know, how do we make sure that the fan representatives on whatever the new board looks like are directly influenced by the fan membership and not just people making the decision that they feel is right on our behalf. And so I assume that stuff's to be ironed out, but I think that would be, I think, speaking to people around, that's actually the 100%, 51% isn't what people are concerned about. It's more about ensuring that those fans' voices are directly represented rather than people making decisions on our behalf that we may or may not agree with. I don't know if that's other people's feelings.
Yeah, no, they'll all be. Well, can I answer the question? Yeah. So yes, they will all those supporters will be elected to the boards in exactly the same way as Bury AFC has operated in the last season. There is assuming a deal can be agreed, there'll be a process to, I think it's called amalgamate the supporter societies, which is partly why it takes so long, because it's deliberately a difficult process so that people don't make quick decisions and get things wrong. But yes, you'd have all of that representation. And the benefactor involvement, this is important because you talked about kind of the management team, and I as a benefactor have put my money in. I want to have a strategic involvement because frankly I've put a huge amount of my family's life savings in. And I don't want it pissing up a wall, for want of a better phrase. But I don't want to be involved day to day. I don't have time. I don't live locally anymore. And frankly, I'm not good at it. There's far better people than me, and I would argue most of the other benefactors, day to day, making the management decisions, running the club. Like, fantastic. That's what it needs to be. But the key is to be a member of whichever supporter society or both, so that you have a vote, so you have a say, so you've got the right people, and also to get the right candidates, putting the names forward from both sides. It needs to be, you know, an amalgamation of the best people.
And those people could be completely new people who aren't on our
fresh blood, fresh energy. Frankly, I've been doing this a year. I'm knackered. You need, and it's normal for anybody, any volunteer. You go into it with enthusiasm. After a while, you get tired, and so you need that fresh blood coming through all the time.
Our purpose of getting the club out together is to get the thing going, basically, to give the possibility of this happening again, so that there's Bury Football Club will exist in the future, and our role in that is to get the thing going. It's not to take over and run it.
Am I allowed?
Shall I keep hold of this?
Oh, what I would like to say is I've got my own. I'm a Bury supporter. I haven't gone to watch AFC, and in the last 3 years I've been to watch one football game. That was Ryan Lowe's Plymouth at Accrington. I was invited and I went, and it was nice to be in a football stadium, but I didn't feel anything. What would a successful coming together look like to me? This is only my personal opinion. What's great is there are supporters of both teams in this room, and this is my personal feeling. It has to be palatable for both sides. For me, I'd take the manager, he's contracted, I'd take the contracted players, so that the supporters of AFC have got that emotional connection with those players and that manager. You've got that connectivity. If I was to see a team running out at Gigg Lane next season in Bury shirts, I'd be okay with the manager and the contracted players, but I personally would love to see some ex-Bury FC players in that squad, so that I could have that connection. So it felt right. Does that make sense? The team at AFC in the background, as Matt has said, have done a fantastic job in running the club and the way that it's operated, and we could come together and work together. And as long as there was a name change that we all agreed on, then that would be complete. I feel that would be palatable for me. How it will be for the rest of you, I don't know, but that's just my feeling about how we make this come together. There's got to be, when that team runs out, there's got to be that emotional connection for everybody, so they can go, oh yeah, there's such a player, there's such a player, and that's it. We don't always agree. You know, we've as a supporter society and all the benefactors, you know, we don't always agree. There's been a few heated discussions and debates about what we want, but I just wanted to share with you, group, that's my feelings. Whether you agree or disagree, it's entirely up to you, but that's my feelings. Thank you for listening.
If I could say a couple of other things. One is, you know, it is going to feel different whether we come together or not when there's football playing here again, because I think most people here have rented a house versus owning a house at some point in their lives. It feels different when you're renting a house versus owning a house. When the fans sit out here next time, they're going to own this stadium, they're going to own this club, and that is going to feel different, as opposed to waiting for some rich person or not that rich telling them what's going to happen, right? We have to have the ownership of it then to say, here's what we want it to be, and that will be based on, you know, the democratic process that we want to set up, which is the way that AFC have it. It's a step up in terms of responsibility, given that, you know, there's a ground and all of the operations that need to go with that, but it's going to feel very different. And the other thing about, you know, if we all come together, we can't expect that everyone's going to agree all the time. I mean, we're all parts of families where, you know, someone gets drunk at Christmas and, you know, an argument breaks out, but that's what families are like, and we have to accept that. And, you know, that's not always easy. And the other thing I wanted to say was, there was a question about sponsorship earlier. Actually, the place where I work, we're just in the closing stages of negotiating for some sponsorship of the stadium. And hopefully they'll be playing in shirts with the company name on the front tomorrow. So that will be part of the revenue stream. We're hoping that will kind of kick off the sponsorship, because there's so much positive news about the stadium and the future of the club that that companies want to be associated with that. So I think we've got something to say, even without short-term football, in terms of the value of sponsorship. Now that's a significant ring.
Just on the ownership, one point I didn't make in the presentation, which I should have, is just if you are a member of the Bury FC Supporter Society, it's perhaps not always clear, but you own this right now. You know, it's not like some, oh yeah, well I own it because I'm a fan. No, you legally own it.
Okay, if this thing's worth 1.5 million, which broadly it is, your ownership interest is about £500 for a £10 membership. You can't sell it, you can't trade it in, but it's a pretty good return on investment if that's the way. But the point is, you genuinely own this, and you will own it forever.
So would you fix the ceiling in here?
David.
Yeah. Basically, remember, one person has caused all this.
Yep.
His name was Steve Dale.
No, Stuart Day. Stuart Day. You always get it wrong.
Two people. Dale was responsible for it. And it's important to know that the acquisition of this ground, he's not received one penny.
Nothing. Not a penny.
1 penny. And he's the man that's caused all this rift, unfortunately. But we need to get it back together. And show him wrong. Show him what he did was wrong.
We mustn't let Stuart Day and Steve Dale be the things we remember about Bury Football Club. Let's remember Colin Bell. Let's remember all the international players who've played here. Let's remember the promotions. Let's remember all the good times. Let's remember FA Cup wins. That's Bury Football Club. It's not Steve
Wins.
Dale.
Who remembers the FA Cup win? How old are you?
But you know, I think it's, and I'm quite outspoken on this. I mean, football in general's got a problem with ownership, right? You know, when I spoke with the FSA, you know, and asked them what are the statistics around fan ownership, it's more than 1,000 teams in the league system, and less than 10% have any fan ownership whatsoever, and the rest of them are owned by rich people who choose to put money in or not. Mostly operated at some form of loss. And that's a crazy situation. And all of the benefactors and everyone I've worked with here and everyone I spoke to at AFC are sworn that we won't be in that situation again. And you know, it has to be said, if you look at purely fan-owned organizations, you know, Wrexham was a situation where the fans voted to let another rich person take over, in this case Ryan Reynolds. You know, when he loses interest, what happens then? Right? And we just can't get back to that. And I think we could be a great example for football of how to do it right.
Just a quick question, because it's fun.
Yeah.
Paying football creditors, when will we know that that's happened?
Well,
or
so
not, as the case may be?
So we're talking with them, right? So we will know in a matter of, you know, a month or less whether we've got a negotiated settlement. Now, whether we pay them will determine as to whether we want to use the name. You know, if we don't have a league place and we vote not to come together, then we might wait, in which case we might have to pay less, because we'll be at 4 out of the 5 years if we wait another season.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Without a merger, how soon could we expect to leave first team football back at Gigg?
Well, you know, I think as we said earlier, we haven't given up on next season, but you know, it becomes less likely, so it'll probably be the season after. But you know, women's could play here, and we could always invite competitions to play here, and you know, and other teams to occasionally play here.
We want to play here next year, but what we don't want to do is rush to it to do it wrong.
Yeah.
What we want to do is we want it to be a lasting you know, legacy for Bury.
But without the merger, would we be accepting, not for next season, but for the season after, would we be looked upon favourably for late placings of the North West counties, or?
Can't commit. Well, you're at the mercy of the league.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I don't know.
Yeah,
the honest answer.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the rules for getting into leagues, it's almost a catch-22. You know what I mean? Unless you're already in a league, it's very hard to get in. It's essentially a monopolistic setup, right? Yeah. So it would take some negotiation to come up with something.
And just a final one.
Yes.
There is there something somewhere that says because AFC have got a place in the league, Bury FC stroke whatever, if we went to next season, I can't see that there's any reason why that cannot happen. Is there
Yeah,
something?
there's no one has said to us, there's no place for you because of AFC.
Right. I think that would
No
be
one
good
has
to
said
get that out, because that does cause quite a bit.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of emotive conversation around that, but we haven't had that answer from anyone.
It wouldn't make sense for it to be.
You get it in every. Bury's got multiple
Exactly.
football teams.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's not what anybody wants, but you know, to have more than one
I
team.
think it
is,
does cause quite a bit of hurt and pain to people, so I think it's good to have that clear.
Yeah. But yeah, ultimately, the FA. This is where we talk about football creditors and creditors. Creditors is insolvency law.
Yeah.
There's law for all of that. The FA is a club. They make their own rules, they can change their own rules, they can do what they want. And ultimately they're the final arbiter. Unless you're going to go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport to argue with them, it's what they say goes. So you've just got to try and work with them as much as you can.
So when you say they make their own rules, would that go with the 3 to 5 years of the name as well?
Yeah.
So could that be negotiated at some point as well, if needs be?
Yeah.
If you pay the football creditors, would it need to be negotiated still?
There's still a bit of a grey area,
Yeah.
but it's compelling. Because if we said, look, we're only going to give them the money if you'll let us do it, that that's why we shouldn't pay them until we get the permission on the name. So that, yeah.
Yes.
How's the separate entity, which is AFC at this moment in time, have they helped financially with this?
No.
Not at all.
No, but they wouldn't do. It's
But
completely
we
separate.
have to go cap in hand and say, can you come here?
We're not going cap in hand.
If there's a merger, so that's negotiating.
If there's a merger, one assumes that.
So we're negotiating with something that's not put 1 penny into this club. Is that correct?
No, but if you merged, the assets of Bury AFC would be combined with the assets of
What happened to the Legends money?
I don't know.
We've been trying to find that.
Before my involvement, I'm afraid, so I can't.
I think Chris Murray and Ben Mount.
Yeah.
those have
It's
got it
always
in
said
a-
It's in there. It's in.
in account.
It's on our agenda. Let's just put it that way.
It's not with
It's not
AFC.
going
I
on
know.
past, it's gone, let's move
Not
on.
20 grand.
No.
22,000,
We've
right?
got to learn to forget what's gone on and try and move forward. And I just think it's so silly, all these silly little bickerings about things that have gone on in the past.
It's a legitimate question. What happened
Yeah,
to
but
the
no one watched football.
I think it's there. I feel it's safe. Do you think not?
Any other questions?
Yeah, no, but where it is is the question. I think
We were always told that it was in a separate.
Stay together.
Right.
Sorry, I'm just going to ask about the membership scheme. Are you going to revise the membership scheme to the current £10 a year?
Again, it depends on what happens next season, but.
Are you going to wait on the merger then? On the top?
Well, I mean, yeah, we're going to hopefully win that, but for next season, if this merger's not moving forward, then we'll see how we want it to
It
be.
wouldn't be before a
Like-
football team is established.
Well, it would be. I don't think it's smart to change the membership scheme today, and then in 3 months' time say, "Oh, now we're merging with Bury AFC, so we're changing the membership scheme again," because all those people have gone, "Okay, well, we've signed up to this, and you've changed it 3 months later." For now, what we have, we keep, and then if there's a merger, great, and if there's not, then
Yeah,
we have to
if
review.
there's a non-merged team here, it changes what you might charge for membership versus if there is.
And sorry, my last question. If there is a merger, will both societies get a vote on it? The members of
Yes,
both
so
societies?
both societies have to vote positively for it. So if one society says yes and another says no, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It has to be both societies have to agree. So no one can force anyone to do this whole process. No one can force anybody to do anything. It's democratic.
It's quite substantial, 75%, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it's a high threshold. So this is hard. You know, even
It's a
if
high threshold to vote in favour of
Favour,
it.
yeah.
Is that for both societies or
Yeah.
just for both? Is that sort of a standard thing then for CBSs to have a...
again, it's deliberately difficult to
Right.
so that people don't just
What
rush
if
in.
we had something like 70% on each? That would feel very perverse that we end up not merging when a vast majority of people want to.
Yep.
If you're a member of both, you only get one vote, you don't get two votes.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So which one takes priority?
Well, I think you get a vote in each and then you merge them together. So I think there has to be an overall vote in each.
It's quite a complex process then. You'd hope so.
I don't know. Jekyll and Hyde, presumably.
Just a final comment, really. I mean, there is a huge amount of emotion involved. But when I talk to people outside football or even from other football jurisdictions, they say, well, one lot's got a stadium, one lot's got a team. There should be synergy, and you both need each other. And I think surely you should be able to negotiate positively on that basis.
We want to negotiate positively, don't we?
Yeah. And don't call us Shirley. Sorry.
Sorry?
And don't call us Shirley. Sorry.
Yeah, totally. Any more? I hope this has been helpful as a kind of explanation. Otherwise, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your questions and your contributions. And yeah, I hope we've got further news soon.